So you have joined us for the Making Better Spaces Best Practices for Customer Care and Compliance. Thanks, everyone. Before we do introductions, I just want to go through a few housekeeping details. We are recording this webinar, and if you obviously signed up, it will be sent to you afterward. We love to see you saying hello in the chat, but if you have specific questions, please put those in the Q&A underneath, and we will either answer those in real time or save those for the end of the panel. And again, my colleague Meg here is helping out to make sure that everybody's seen and can follow up with any questions later. So I'm super excited because I'm joined by this esteemed panel, and who I call my little sister in design and infrastructure and solving problems around big issues, Claire Coder. She is the CEO of AntFlow. And we have worked together in the past, but I call her my little sister because we're both working on these issues as entrepreneurs, but also just really being mission driven. So with Mamava, it's about creating infrastructure and support for lactation and breastfeeding. And for Claire, it's about creating places for free vending of period products when she can explain herself. I today was reading an article about hostile architecture, and I thought, oh, what's the opposite of hostile architecture and infrastructure? I would say it's compassionate infrastructure. And I think that this panel is convened to talk about what is more compassionate for experiences as we go out into the world in the workplace. So we're excited to have you, Claire. I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our panelists.
Yes. Well, on our panel today, we are so excited to hear from the experts about compassionate spaces. And the link for all of these esteemed panelists is they all care deeply about experience and facilities management. So we have Toya Lassire, the Senior Director of Guest and Team Member Experience at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We have Hugo Sanchez, the Senior Category Manager at Cushman and Wakefield. Nick Longo, Director of Aviation at Patrick Leahy, Burlington International Airport. And rounding us out, we have Robert Gebhardt, Global Experience Services Director at JLL Jones Lang LaSalle.
Great. Thanks, Claire. And I want to warm us up. So I'm going to ask, and Claire and I are going to ask different questions based on the expertise of what we know that our panelists bring. But this one question is going to go to everybody. And I'm going to start out with sort of a speed round here really quickly. What is your guest experience slash facilities management superpower? And I'm actually going to start with you, Claire. What is your experience, guest experience, facilities management superpower?
Oh, well, I'm a
Entrepreneurial
little,
super.
yeah, I'm a little biased, but I think from a facilities perspective, what I do and what we do at AntFlow is we reimagine the bathrooms through the lens of a female. So often in facilities, we think about amazing lighting and hallways and availability to throw away our trash. But at AntFlow, we really focus on design through the lens of a female. And that's what I think that our superpower is at AntFlow. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to Nick. What's your facilities superpower?
Yeah, I actually took a little while to think about this because this was a hard question for me, but I think it's somewhat similar, but it's really my sympathetic and empathetic approach to my experiences, but trying to figure out other folks' experiences as well, right? From our customer base is everything from pilots at the airport to passengers to kids to women to families to business folks going in and out. So trying to put ourselves in the shoes of everybody, I would say, is where what I'm really good at and what my superpower is to really make sure I'm focused on other people.
Right. Hugo.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for having this panel. This is such an important topic thanks to Enflow and Mamava. This is super important for everybody. I think from my perspective, in Cushman and Wakefield, we have just thousands of different clients. So I think our superpower is that we listen. We try to be that trusted advisor so that we understand what's important to our client for their specific population, right? Be it at an airport like Nick, or be it at a university, or be it at a corporate headquarter. How do we help and listen so that the client sees us as someone that is, to Nick's point, empathetic and understanding what is important to their population, so that we can adapt a solution for them to make a better workspace for their employees.
All right, Toya.
Yes, I'm gonna double down on what Hugo said and say thank you for hosting such an incredible, important webinar today. You know, I'm gonna have to say Southern hospitality, baby, because down here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, one of the things that a part of our philosophy, our service philosophy, is treating everyone like a welcome guest in our home. And honestly, I've lived all over the country, right, Sascha? But I'll tell you this, we really do have that Southern hospitality, and the superpower, it emanates throughout the entire, from the team to the staff to the guests that come in, and it just really does feel very homey. So I think for us to be able to create such exceptional experiences that we do, it's because of that Southern hospitality. I'm gonna say that's our superpower.
Well, my background is in brand design and experience design, so I love it when I can get something really tangible like that and think about like literally a filter by which you make decisions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we all, even those of us who live in New England, can kind of understand what that means. So that's an excellent answer. All right, Rob.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the thoughts that often comes to mind is just personal connections, right? Hugo mentioned, like CBRE, or rather Cushman, we have a lot of clients, right? So we're constantly trying to listen and understand and almost empathize with them on their journey, where they are, and it really means meeting each individual in that place. And so it may be in the bathroom, it may be in the conference room, it may be on their journey through the parking lot. It really doesn't matter, right? We just need to take all that into kind of context. And again, being a connector of people working remotely, making sure that my team, who is also remote, have abilities to connect virtually, as we're doing on this conversation today, is very impactful as well. And so we want to be in person, but we also want to connect, wherever and however we can.
I think that's a great answer. You brought up this language of context, and that's another principle for design, is like the context with which a person is experiencing a space. Again, from a parking lot to a bathroom stall, it's what they're bringing to it as a human. And that principle around design is like paying attention to the intimate context of the user themselves. So excellent. Well, thank you for humoring that question. I'm going to go to my friend Nick at Burlington, Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport. Recently had a name change with our esteemed senator. So if anybody has not been to BTV, you are missing something, because it's sort of a unique reflection of the Vermont experience, sort of the independent Ben and Jerry's, the quirkiness of Vermont. And I think that it's a reflection of the Vermont experience. So maybe you could share the framework you use to make decisions about what actually becomes part of Burlington International Airport.
Yeah, I mean, right now is, I think, especially a good time for that question. We're in the middle, or really just beginning, a $60 million terminal expansion project. So that question is highly relevant on everything that we've started with paper, right? Looking at blueprints and going over and over and over again, trying to put ourselves in the mindset of both our employees and our customers. Very, very similar to what Robert said, right? We want to know how people get from the parking garage to the gate, and vice versa, and how long does it take, and where the bathrooms are. But really, not just my decisions too, right? Like, I really want to make sure the energy that I bring and the excitement and passion I have for the industry spreads to my employees and to my team and to the teams that work next to us, to empower them to say, should this toilet be this high or this high? Or where should we put The paper towel holders are like very, very, very specific details, starting on a piece of paper and a blueprint all the way to what we have out the window, which is massive steel and next week big timber products coming in place so that the visual aspect of that experience is just as important as the physical infrastructure and experience as you walk through. So, making sure everybody is empowered to make those decisions.
And you have brought in, unique dining experiences. So it's not like Burlington has McDonald's as an example.
Mm.
You're choosing uh, partners that are a reflection of the spirit of Vermont. So
Yeah.
maybe you can say a little
Yep.
bit more about that. Dining,
Restaurants,
rocking chairs,
restaurant.
or yeah.
Yep. Even like products like what you see behind me, right? We want to use Vermont products, Vermont wood, Vermont maple, Vermont restaurants, Vermont stores. Even when we do use national chains like Hudson News, for example, which is in our terminal, we still require them to carry Vermont products in their stores.
Nick, I so appreciate how thoughtful you are in making these investments. But I'm going to bring in Hugo into this conversation because everyone on this phone call understands and knows that those investments do come with a cost. It's probably cheaper to do it outsourced. It's probably cheaper to not go with just the Burlington, Vermont brands. And Hugo, from your perspective as a category manager, how are you thinking about the return on investment of experience?
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up a really good point because everything has a cost attached to it, right? So sitting in procurement and category management, we have to consider, what is going to be the ROI into it versus, what is the compliance. And honestly, from my perspective, I don't think those two are mutually exclusive. I actually think they're supplemental to each other because the better environment you put out there for employees, for travelers, for people to be in those spaces, the more utilization you will get out of those locations and places that you put in. So I think, talking about the point about Nick using like local resources, that is something that we can scope into the experience, into the project design to make sure that X percentage of the project is with local resources so that it meets a stakeholder requirement, but also gives you that level of product and delivery that makes it feel like you're still at home, you're still in a welcoming space, welcoming location that is inviting for you to stay there and participate and do your work. So I think the investment goes hand in hand with the return on compliance that you get on that. So again, I think definitely a consideration, but not to a detriment. I think if anything, they supplement each other to give you a better solution for what you're after.
That's such a thoughtful point because I'm sitting here thinking, wow, I really want to go out of my way on a next layover just so I can go to this airport to experience the investments and the details that they have thoughtfully considered.
Yep. Yeah. And I think and I'm sure Nick and Toya will assess to putting something that is just kind of boilerplate to meet the need versus putting something that is probably a little bit more budget required, but gives you a lot more foot traffic through it or more engagement with it. I think they can attest to the difference that makes. And it comes with, again, making those commitments on funds, but what is really your goal after, right? Is it to get more utilization of that space? And if that's the case, then I think definitely the solution is to open up a little bit more budget to make those calls.
Great. So I have a question for Toya. So we've worked with Toya in a number of the places, a lot of NFL stadiums, which I know host many, many other things. And you've had a great esteemed career. And I'm guessing it's, and I could be wrong, sort of male dominated in the industry. Facilities, I think facilities tend to be male dominated. It's been one of our interesting challenges with Mamava to kind of explain this lactation thing to often a group of gentlemen. But maybe you can share some of the barriers or challenges you faced in creating welcoming spaces. You have done lactation, you've done sensory rooms, and the strategies you've used to overcome them.
Yeah, Sasha, male dominated, of course. We're in sports and entertainment. This has been my pathway forever, though. This is the only thing that I've ever done is sports and entertainment. in my work career. I'll say that I've been very fortunate though to work with some really amazing male leaders who have shared the vision and who have champion the vision of making sure that we include everyone. And to your point, doesn't matter what the ability is or what we want to do. But one of the things I early on, I remember that, and even probably today, a lot of people think, oh well, it's really, you're in a male environment because you're in sports, but the truth is, and we know this, right, Sascha, from our research, is that the NFL attendees are 45% to 50% women. So once we get that ground level and we understand, oh, this is really important, then I think one of the things is that I've just done a lot of research to just make it black and white. There's really nothing in between. And then more importantly, I've faced some things where some folks that I've worked with before have said, well, how many people do you really need for like a sensory room? If you only get, the point is that you want to make it, build it and they will come. You want to make it already very accessible, very inclusive, and ensure that there's a high level of inclusion. So I think one of the things, for example, I'll give you another example right now, is that we're hosting World Cup in 2026. And so you'll have lots of different cultures coming into North America. And we want to make sure that we have all types of opportunities for everybody. Mainly just making sure that everybody gets that vision. And I'm pretty good at it. So I'll just say that, I don't stop. And I'm not going to really use the word bulldog, but I will say that things that are really important, you have to fight for, and you have to be unapologetically willing to fight for it. And I think that is really something that I've been fortunate to meet a lot of like minds when it comes to things that are necessary for everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think to that point of black and white, it's sort of that combination of data, and the compliance can be part of that data, numbers of visitors and so on, but also then storytelling, and that
Yes.
like get the data, but you got to like figure out what to do with it to finesse that storytelling. Super helpful.
Spot on, Sascha. Spot on. The storytelling is very important. Imagine a mom or, a parent that comes to a building who has, who has the need to be able to use a Mamava or whatever it is for Claire, those needs that we have, to be able to say, hey, I went to Mercedes-Benz Stadium and I really had a good time. And I had a good time because of all these different reasons. Hugo said it, that the ROI supplemental, it's just really making sure that you put your money where your mouth is, and you create those experiences that you say you're going to do. Yeah.
Boy, I appreciate how you combine data with storytelling. And one thing that I've observed at JLL, JLL Spark is an investor in AntFlow, which is the corporate venture arm of JLL. JLL is constantly sharing data and research and information. And Robert, when it comes to workplace experience, sometimes it can feel not really trackable. How do we track the number of menstruators that are actually benefiting from AntFlow period products in the bathrooms? Because Robert's not going to stand outside the bathroom and say, "Hey, did you like the AntFlow products?" So, Robert, how do you track and leverage data as it pertains to workplace experience?
Yeah. So Claire, first of all, thank you for highlighting JLL in that context. We are very, very proud of the work that we're doing as an incubator of a lot of different startups and programs like AntFlow. Listen, I'm very fortunate, right? I'm part of a global organization. We're 100 and almost 15,000 strong. And we do have wonderful teams working on data and analytics. And so I'm on the receiving end of all of that great research, our research team, our consulting teams, our benchmarking teams. So there's a lot of tools that we have, and there's a lot of wonderful information that we have. We need to combine that information, though, with our client information as well. Our clients are collecting a wealth of great data that combined, right, put into a large data lake will really help tell the story, right? To still kind of Tanya's comment about storytelling here is when we pull those pieces together, we can tell the compelling story. We can tell or at least show what the return on investment is going to be. We can show the user satisfaction. So we do look at a lot of different data points. occupancy tracking, utilization trends, things like that. But then we also do, I would call it a little bit more grassroots efforts, journey mapping, persona development, understanding the user that is in our space. And again, I'm talking specifically within the workplace, but what does a visitor expect and need when they come to an office? What does a employee who is there 5 days a week need and expect? Hey, in this hybrid world that we're still in and will be probably forever, what does the employee who comes in only 2 or 3 days a week need? They're still badged. There's a perception, well, you know the office. Yeah, but you know what? I'm here so infrequently. I forgot my plug today. I forgot this, that, day. So we really have to, again, as empathetic leaders, put ourselves into their shoes and actually take the steps that they take throughout the day to figure out where they're going and what those touch points are going to be. And so with all of that data, we also do a lot of observational, kind of awareness, right? Actually strategically placing ambassadors or community managers in areas of the building to observe how people are moving and using the space. And then combined with raw data, numbers, we build the story and can bring that back either to our teams to elevate or to our clients to invest.
Super helpful.
Hey, Sascha, I just wanted to tell Robert two things. A, it was actually you who said storytelling. You brought me back to the center because it's true. The data plus the storytelling does really give us where we got to go. And then second, my name's Toya, Robert, not Tanya. It's okay. It's okay. It's a common mistake. It's a common mistake, but I just wanted to give credit.
I can't see the little names.
It's all good. I just wanted to make sure because Sascha is such a brilliant leader that I wanted to make sure that we know she knows storytelling for sure.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I think it's really interesting that this is a cohort. We all do really different things, but we're all about getting people to leave their houses and be out in the world and experience great things. And I was thinking about this, when was the last time you go to a movie? I'm privileged enough to have my own home and I have like a big TV. Like I got to figure out how to get out of the house, and because being in community is healthy and good for people, but they want to feel welcome and they want those experiences to be designed around their needs. So I think a lot of what Rob brought out there was a really, really good reminder there. And I want to ask Nick also sort of similar question. In your world where folks are flying kind of in and out of the facility and you're making changes, how do you track what the experience is and that improvements are actually being made, that they're working? How do you track that at the airport?
Yeah, I think we're more we're a little bit more in tune with what Robert was saying with kind of that grassroots effort, right? Of course we collect data, we collect surveys that we put out to our customers and our employees, and not just our employees, but all of the employees that you see in any airport, right? There's hundreds and hundreds, but we're really in the mindset of maybe ourselves, we should park in a different spot every day, right? Which is, by the way, challenging because I always forget where I park. But you park somewhere every day and then you have that different mindset, that different experience of where to go. Or maybe set up, instead of being in your office for, your email time, maybe go out in the terminal a little bit and hear those stories that are actually happening around you, or hear somebody comment like, oh, I wish we had this, or I'm so happy that the airport has ping pong and shuffleboard and we have giant chests in the terminal, just to make that time a little bit happier and friendlier and Vermontier throughout. Toya, you actually said something really early that stuck with me too. You said this is in somewhat of what you said. You said this is our home, right? This is our space, our home. And that's what we feel like here too. This is our home and we want that impression to be really good. But at the same time, we're okay changing to make sure that it's better for you too. But it's hard, because it is for us collecting that data and using that data, but hearing the stories from everybody that walks through as much as we can.
Right. And to the point, like everybody has the ability to make a story, right? I think Toya brought that up. So it's not just about how you're finessing it and integrating it into the people who are delivering that customer experience, but it's the folks who are taking it with them and putting you on Instagram for good or bad,
Yeah,
or
true.
X. So being aware of that, we have so many stakeholders, and now those stakeholders can have a very easy platform to be to be heard. Again, for good and bad. For us, it's been really good because for the most part, the stories that if there is a pod or a lactation room that are being shared are very positive and people feel welcome. So I want to pivot a little bit to policy. I'm guessing that a lot of folks on this call are interested in that subject. And it's definitely been a driver for the adoption of Mamava pods and lactation rooms. In particular, in 2022, the Pump Act was passed, which really required employers to provide breastfeeding employees with break time and a designated space that wasn't a restroom, kind of closed the gap to really expand other legislation that existed on a state level. But I know all about this in the lactation realm, but I know less about menstruation and period products. So maybe Claire, you could share what compliance means in your world.
Yeah, there's legislation and compliance considerations for both lactation and menstruation. On the ant flow side, 25 states have either passed or require schools to offer free period products in bathrooms. They've either passed legislation or they've allocated funding. And Ann Arbor, Michigan actually was the first city to require all bathrooms outside of the home to offer free period products in the bathrooms. And this legislation is predominantly driven by the data that shows that offering free period care in school bathrooms increases attendance amongst girls. And the storytelling of those horrible, tragic moments of getting your period unexpectedly and needing to leave work to go get supplies. So that's at the state level. And then interestingly, at a federal level, there is a piece of policy that has not yet passed, but does have about 90 co-sponsors, the Menstrual Equity for All Act. This would require employers over 100 employees to offer free period products. So it parallels the Pump Act that you've described, Sascha. But you and I both know that just because policy passes, that does not mean that immediately solutions are implemented. And I'm sure our facility leaders here and experienced leaders on the call also can smile and laugh because it is quite a consideration. As policy passes, how do we actually implement these critical solutions? And Sascha, you've done an incredible job with Mamava translating that Pump Act policy to actionable solutions, and would love to get some of your insights as we think about this Menstrual Equity for All Act that could impact hundreds and thousands of employers in the event that it passes.
Yeah, so for us, we want to support at all levels, and we often are brought in when facilities or employers have kind of no idea what they have or what people are doing or that it's even a problem. So whether it's a small account or a big account, we'll often do just an audit, like what exists now? What are your birth rates? We know that most moms, about 84%, at least initiate breastfeeding. And so that the correlation of having a baby and wanting to breastfeed is very much tied together. So we'll look at that. We will do facilities visits to understand where people are working, so proximity to the spaces that might already exist. And then we'll often be building capacity, right? Or in the context of a stadium, great, you have a lactation room, but like only so many people can access it. And it's, a 25-minute walk across the stadium to actually get in. We also have this mobile app. So even if you're not placing pods, the mobile app allows us to put lactation rooms that exist in the world. So it's just a handy tool with about 5,000 public lactation rooms, plus our public pods that can, again, it's not just about, finding the room in time, but the whole, again, journey of a person who needs to be pumping. I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, but yeah, wait for the floodgates to open and perhaps, competition to come in a maybe steeper way, but with the kind of running start that I think both of our companies have, and also being mission driven. So we are about solving this problem from a mission standpoint. We are women owned and sort of own the stories too, right? So recommendation is to continue to own those stories as it becomes more ingrained in culture to have this expectation. But I love that because you brought things to the surface, Claire, that like, duh, I never even thought about the sort of tax on menstruation for all those reasons, and the compelling evidence around school absenteeism and all the things you think about are just like so obvious, but you all put a brand name to it, Ant Flow. So I have a question. I think I will put this out to all of our panelists in terms of some of the core principles that you hold as facilities operators, especially in a sort of a climate where inclusivity is actually being deemed something that people are pushing against. So maybe with Nick, so what are those principles like in this political climate of kind of pushback on inclusivity that you're holding dear right now?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And actually, tomorrow I'm flying down to Washington, D.C. to visit with our legislators and others to talk. We always talk about funding, of course, because there has to be some funding conversations associated with everything that we're doing. But to talk about the collaboration, and for us, we're in Vermont. The political climate is tough, especially when we talk about our amazing neighbors to the north of us, which is Canada. And we really rely on a lot of Canadian traffic through our airport. And the relationship is tense right now, but that shouldn't be the case. We still share so many different businesses and flights and all sorts of different things that we really, really need to make sure that regardless of the political climate, that we still interact with our friends to the north in Canada to make sure that we say, we see you and you're 100% welcome here every single day, every single time. And also, we want to make sure your experience is addressed as well, because of course, all our experience is always different. And then more on a local level, real quick, I'll just say, specifically with our federal partners, we have many federal partners here at the airport, from Homeland Security with TSA to the Federal Aviation Administration to National Weather Service, who's here. And part of that, part of the equation to not really look at that political climate, but more say, you too are our neighbor and you work in our buildings and our facilities. Let's collaborate. Let's make sure you're drinking from the same water fountain. Let's have a barbecue together. Let's collaborate and share those ideas to make sure that we welcome everybody. Everybody from refugees that the first time in the United States would be right here at this airport, to our Canadian partners, and of course our employees. So, I could talk a lot about this, and I even talked just the other day to our state legislators about this. I really, really care. We should care, regardless of some of the incredibly tough conversations politically, because it doesn't matter when you're an FAA air traffic controller. You are skilled, you are a human being, and you can do your work, and you can actually work here at the airport too.
I think it's also just a really good reminder that your representatives are there for a reason, and that good public policy is promoted by the electorate, and we have a voice there. And good public policy, in the case of Mamava, is good for business. Like, until there was this federal, national, regional legislation, it was just a nice mission-based idea. But the compliance thing drove us into a world where we have 60 employees and we manufacture in our home state and we're solving this problem. So I think that's a really good reminder. You have thoughts on this, Hugo, and like the political climate?
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you two aspects. I'll give you the Hugo angle, and then I'll give you my corporate version. So the Hugo version, and Claire's laughing because she's known me outside of work. To me, it's just do the right thing, right? It boils down to doing the right thing, and I say that that's the Hugo version, but it really ties into my corporate version too. Of kind of cliche-ish here a little bit, but the better never settles for our company is doing the right thing for our clients. Doing the clients want to do the right thing for their employees, their students, their passengers, whoever it happens to be for their location, their attendees for Taya. So doing the right thing shouldn't be hard, regardless of political climate, regardless of political labels. I think we in the corporate world need to bring back humanity into our roles, and that's something that I aspire to do. Sometimes I'm a little too positive, perhaps, but I think that helps me weed out the people that are there just for the surface stuff, and then make those deep connections with people like Claire, right, where we're making a beneficial impact for 47% of the workforce, right? This is something that is gonna be well seen, whether I'm on this role or somebody else is on this role. The people that are going to show up day to day, away from their homes, away from their places, are going to be comfortable there because the company, their tenant, chose to do the right thing, and that I think aligns greatly with not only my personal values but also my company values. That we try to continue going far, right? We like to say we didn't go this far just to go this far, right? We get there, and we're going to continue making it better because at the end of the day, like you said, Sasha, it's good for business, right? If our clients are happy, they're going to be happy. I'm sure Robert will agree with that, right? Happy tenants make happy clients, and that for us is huge because it lets our work speak for itself.
I love that. I haven't heard that before. We didn't come this far we didn't go this far to just go this far. I love that.
Right. Yeah.
Excellent. Rob, thoughts on this one?
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with Hugo's personal comments about doing the right thing, and I think that all of us in the position that we're in do the right thing, want to do the right thing. We're all empathetic leaders, right? And for us as an organization, I mean, we're on both sides, right? Because we have to be, well, first and foremost, an educator, right? We have to help our clients understand and be aware of what's going on, and bring forward any of those changes that are occurring. We also have a position to be a voice for them as well. And I will say that JLL for years now has had a very big presence at the World Economic Forum every year in Davos, right? And our senior leaders are there talking about major changes that are happening geopolitically, right? Every single year, we're at the forefront of those types of conversations. That information makes its way back to our teams, who then in turn help our clients. But at the same time, we have hundreds of clients, and so we do need to meet them where they are on their own individual journey, and each one is in a different space. They have a different expectation or a different understanding or a different position on where they want to be, and so we do have to meet them there, but again, doing it with as much empathy as we can bring to that conversation in that situation.
Great. Toya.
Yeah, I want to just, Rob has said this a couple times, and I really appreciate it about being an empathetic leader. You've said it a few times during this conversation, and you're so right. Like that's the whole thing, is that you've got to be able to have the empathy and to be able to really consider that there's humanity. I think Hugo may have said that, is that we're all human beings, and we have to relate that way. But one of the things I just want to mention is, when the climate started to change, and some of us could see this far out, but our leadership said, we're not changing just because this political climate changes. We are going to stand for what we stand for. And one of our cornerstone core values is to include everyone. And we're not going to just all of a sudden, because some foolishness is going on in the world right now, stop doing that. We're going to keep doing what we do and standing up for what's right, and ensuring that that everyone, no matter what, feels good, warm, comfortable, welcomed in this environment. And that's how I live my life anyway. And nobody can make me, the adage, you got to stand for something or fall for everything. Nobody can make you do something, give me liberty or give me death, right? It's just the truth. So I feel like it crosses all the way across everything that you have to, don't just go with the flow. Oh, that I was about to say, don't go with the flow, but
Oh,
no pun
Toya.
intended,
Too
Claire.
too late for me, Taya.
But the antithesis of that, actually, go with the flow when it comes to being right and doing the right thing. That's who we are, and I'm very proud to work for the organization and for the team that I work with, is because when it comes to workplace equity and when it comes to guest equity, we are all about it. And you don't change that. I will never change that.
I
Yeah, and
love that.
Toya, one thing I'll just add to that, because I think you just tied it together very nicely there, is while we're talking about the workplace, and you might be talking about, a corporate, an event space, and we got Nick in the airport. At the end of the day, right, the audience that we're all supporting, right, flow through those spaces, right? So they're at the airport. They come into our office. Then they're at night, they're going to an event, right, at the stadium, at the arena. There needs to be consistency wherever they go, right? They can't feel that there are, the haves and the have-nots with, if I go in this environment, I'm supported and my voice is heard. And if I'm here, I don't feel like anybody recognizes me, right? We have a role to play together, although we work in completely different spaces in our day jobs. There's a natural synergy. There's this woven fabric that exists within this ecosystem that we're all part of.
That's right. That's right.
What I so appreciate from all of these responses is that everybody's still doing the work. And oftentimes it can feel like in moments of uncertainty, we freeze. Oh, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to freeze. And as Hugo mentioned, better never settles. So we have to keep going and we have to keep doing, because as far as I'm concerned, there's two things for certain are not going to change. That's menstruation and lactation. So
That's
we
right.
can't just put our hands up and say, oh, on times of uncertainty, because people are still menstruating and lactating and doing and moving and adjusting and going to spaces. And that's why I am so proud of the work we do at AmpFlow. And I'm proud to be friends of Sascha and learning from each of you, because we are all here doing, and what I like to believe is going with the flow. So Sascha, from your vantage point, if somebody's on this call, we've had actually hundreds of registrations. Folks will be receiving the recording, and we have over 100 folks on this call right now. If somebody's like fired up and they're like, I want to go, there's times of uncertainty, but I'm ready to think about taking a step. What does that look like for Mamava from a lactation space perspective?
Well, I want to go back to a little bit about Rob's point, the fact that we are flowing through these experiences. And I think we both desire this tipping point that someone isn't going to say like, oh, I thought all airports had lactation rooms. That's where we want to go. We want to be in a place where you just expect it, and or period product vending. And I think what's really great in this era is that we have a very visual, tangible thing, right? So it's not like a policy that's paperwork or something that's written. It's something that you actually see and stands out in an environment that signals to folks, even if they're not moms or menstruating people, that they are supported in that environment. So I think that's something that's a special place to be. And then obviously we are here to solve problems. One of the things that we know is we want to make it easier for facilities people. Like, yes, moms and parents use our pods, but the facilities person is the need to support it, to install it, to take care of it, to have it be a mobile asset. So we have thought about all those things. I know that AmpFlow has as well. And you can, check out our website to learn more about it. But because of kind of creating this category, we've figured it most everything out, and we are everywhere that moms go and work, which is everywhere. So, which was a big surprise for my co-founder and I. We thought, oh, airports and convention centers, but then the hospitals started to call, and then the stadiums started to call, and then the elementary schools. And so that has been a great challenge and a great privilege to kind of figure this out. So I know that there have been maybe some questions we want to look over at the Q&A.
Sasha,
And
while you're looking at the Q&A, I wanted to tell you, they have these superstores now. Like there's I'm here in Atlanta, they have the public supermarket chain, and now they've got it where they're doing happy hours at this really big. So I'm like, moms go to supermarkets a lot. So wouldn't it be interesting? I don't know if you're in supermarket yet, but I know it was not good when I had to breastfeed in a grocery store bathroom. You know what I mean?
yes, yeah. I
And
mean, there's
actually, going to the Q&A, Toya, I think that this is so relevant because moms and people who menstruate are going out into the universe. And Allison raised a question. We've leaned this discussion more towards airports and offices and venues, but Allison asked about public spaces like universities and schools and recreation facilities. How do you advocate to bring these solutions to those spaces? Is it different? Is it similar? Sascha, would love your vantage point on that.
I'm sorry, I was reading the Q&A. So how does it differ to go into different locations?
Yeah, in terms of when we think about supporting varying different types of places and spaces, how would you support an advocate like Allison to bring a lactation space to a college and university versus a workplace or an airport?
Yeah, again, part of the challenge is that each of those types of environments have different budgetary cycles and different stakeholders that need to get involved. So how we support is understanding what that means. So if you're a lactivist within an organization, our team connects with you first and then sort of diagrams out what needs to happen to actually push through a lactation program or just even getting a single pod into a space. So again, just our experience on that end of things, our knowledge and overlay, our colleague Meg, who's helping facilitate this, actually knows all about the legislation. So there is that federal level legislation, but there's actually legislation from state on down to municipal, and even some, for instance, all courthouses, federal courthouses in the US have a mandate that they have to have lactation spaces. So even on a channel specific type of direction, and we just have that long experience to help navigate that. I'm not going to lie, it's not always easy, but it often does start with a lactivist. Sometimes it's a mom who works for a corporation or someone who has been a guest and just becomes the squeaky wheel and gets stuff pushed through because of that.
Sasha, if I may add to, because again, we work with tenants, right, with the client, like university staff. I use Alice's example, right? You have to remember, Allison, that universities don't know what they don't know. And I know it sounds very cliche-ish, but if you don't bubble that information up to the relevant people, then they might think they're meeting the need and meeting the mark, but they're not aware that there is an actual need. So use your voice, organizations help, use the legislation, especially for government-funded locations like universities. Definitely leverage that to your advantage to raise your voice to the administration, which will then in turn work with companies like ours or JLL, so that we can source, the right solution for you guys with Mamava or with the Enflow. So definitely use your voice, because we don't know what we don't know, and we're trying to solve for as many problems as we can. And if we don't hear about it, we can't solve for it.
I love
Yeah.
that you mentioned that, Hugo. One of the biggest challenges that we face at AntFlow is when working with the facilities director, which oftentimes they're not menstruating. We call our guys that support AntFlow flow bros. You are one of them. You know this, Hugo. They'll say, we get customer complaints and customer feedback all the time, but we've never heard about free tampons. And as a person who menstruates, it's our we need to raise our voices and say, this is an expectation. This is an expectation that you have lactation pods. This is an expectation that just like you're offering free toilet paper, you should be offering tampons and pads, because unfortunately, what we have to remember is that facilities leaders and experienced leaders are making decisions based on the feedback that they hear. And if they aren't hearing your voice that says, I need this, it's going to make Sascha and I's job a lot harder. So y'all listening, you can make our lives a lot easier, and you can get the products that you need if you raise your voice.
That's right.
It's absolutely true. I think there's a lot of that same theme that are coming through in these questions. And I can say before Nick's days at the airport in Burlington, it was actually a guest that wrote a letter to the previous director about not having a lactation room, and she was kind of stuck there with some bad weather. And so that really lit a fire under that director at the time to put a pilot, like a prototype of our very, very first unit. So that's a perfect example of just sort of that squeaky wheel, the guest who is advocating for themselves, for sure. So my team here, any other questions popping through that you feel like we have not addressed? Yeah, I'm kind of scrolling through the Q&A. Should I go to the bottom?
Yeah, that's right.
We've sort of looked at a lot of these.
We have about 8 minutes left, and to round us out, there's a ton of great questions, a lot of participation in the chat. If folks want to feel free to share where they're messaging in from and their organization, that would be incredible. And Sascha, to round us out, one question that stood out from Sarah is to share an example of a time that somebody turned a negative guest experience into a positive one. And I would love to close us out with one of those very personal stories, because we all know that stories really move the needle. Would love to just briefly pop through to hear those feedback. Robert, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of something that happened. I mean, there's quite a few ideas I have in my head. One I was going to chime in just before, though, to talk about like the point about having more advocates for things that are going on. And as I was preparing, and actually mentioned to I have 3 daughters. I was mentioning to one of my daughters who's in college, I'm going to be part of this, and here's what it's all about. And she's like, specifically speaking about Ant Flow products, she's like, we need that here, because she was like interrupted in her dorm one day doing some studying when one of her, roommates said, hey, can you run over a period product to me, because there's nothing here in the bathroom and I'm in class and I can't get all the way back across the campus. And so it was like, she's like, we need that. I'm like, how do we get that? I'm like, well, let's start talking about it. Let's see what we can do. But I mean, I think, again, just thinking about the little things, right? And the ways that, through observation and our understanding that we can help make change. This idea, Sascha, about, that prototype, right, that happened there before Nick's time, but, like it was that starting point, like it all starts somewhere, right? And so the conversation turns into a pilot, turns into a program, turns into, right, an industry standard, right? I mean, that's really where we need to go.
Yeah, that's sort of the story of our relationship with Toya too, is that somebody saw our previous colleague saw our pods at an airport, and then Toya's stadium in Minneapolis became the first to have our pods, because Toya, caught wind of it too and was promoting it up. Yeah.
It's true. Claire said, well, how do you turn, something in different terminology? How do you turn a fumble into a touchdown, or how do you turn any situation around? And the one thing about it, and somebody very wise told me that's been in this business for a long time, is that we're really, this is the people business. We just happen to attach cool stuff to it, events, concerts, that kind of stuff, but it really is about people. So the whole thing to me is, again, I'm going back to Robert, who said about being empathetic. It's so important, because you always want to be able to relate. And so if you see somebody that has, going through a problem with they just spent $20 on, their food, and then it gets knocked out of their hand, you want to make sure that you can recover that for them so that they have a great experience. It's the same thing with a parent who is breastfeeding or pumping, that I don't want to see somebody have to go into a, into a restroom, because no matter how great your housekeeping or cleaning services team is, you got 80,000 people in the house, and it's just naturally not going to be the environment that you want to be in. So I think putting yourself in the shoes of others and really being empathetic and knowing that we all really are human and we want to have the best times and the best experiences, then I think that, if we can just stay on that track and kind of drown out all the foolishness that's going on. I'm glad you're going to DC tomorrow, Nick. It's just drown it out and keep moving forward toward never being satisfied with anything but excellence. That's how we operate, and that's how I operate in my life.
I'll take a quick minute to answer that too. I think when we go to our legislators or our leaders or whomever to ask for more support, whether it's period products or lactation pods, at the same time, I also invite folks into our spaces too. So a lot of times we'll see it on social media or something like that. And obviously, we can't monitor every single interaction on social media, but sometimes there's repetitive actions or something to that like. So we'll invite those folks in. Truly tell us your story. Truly let us know, what are we doing wrong? Where can we do better? And there's been some examples of that here where it's been challenging. We've struggled certainly on social media in very particular instances. Well, let's get that person here. Let's learn their story and why. And yeah, sure, it's addressing one person, but at that moment, more likely than not, you're going to address a lot of different similarities to a lot of different other people's stories too. So that wasn't a detailed story, but it was in my mind, it's a very specific event that occurred to address that negative interaction that became the touchdown. I love that.
I think, Nick, perfect. I'll wrap us up here on my panel side, but I think every improvement came from someone pointing something out that was, not meeting the mark, right? Like kind of rephrasing that the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yeah.
Same thing here, right? We don't have to recreate the wheel. We can identify those things that if one person is having that issue, then chances are more are having the same issue. So if we fix it for them, we're going to be benefiting a lot more people. And I think, for my world, as having clients that we work for, that is often the case, right? Is we continue to help them enhance not just from a inflow perspective or Mamava perspective, but also even from like an ACA perspective, right? Where they completely miss that they needed a ramp here or a handrail here because it wasn't part of the original design. Someone catches this and points it out. We're gonna help them fix it because, like I said at the beginning, we want to do the right thing. We want to keep people happy so that they keep coming back to their offices, to their airports, to their universities, etc. Because again, doing the right thing will take you a long way. So thank you guys for having us. This was a great panel.
Thank you so much, everyone. We do get to capture these Q&A questions, so I think we can follow up on some of those. There was one question about wheelchair accessibility for our pods. We have a unit that is wheelchair accessible, and we are always working on extensions to our product line, including potentially an outdoor unit. That's it's a whole different animal that we have not tackled yet, but it's something that we are investigating. So thank you, everybody, today. This was a very fun way to spend the afternoon and bring a little optimism, at least to my world. And I thank all the guests and the attendees. We'll be sending this recording out to everybody who registered, and hopefully we'll see you all soon in one of your amazing workplaces or facilities. We're so grateful for you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Keep
you
it
so
flowing.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.